The snow fell in silence, blanketing the empty street in white, except for the small body lying motionless in the middle of the road. Chika Okwudili's exhausted feet froze mid-step, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Her 14-hour shift at City General Hospital had left her numb, scrubs stained with antiseptic and coffee, muscles aching, mind fogged with the weight of lives saved and lost. She should have called 911 and kept walking. Should have let someone else deal with it, like every survival instinct screamed at her to do. But when she knelt beside the small Korean boy and felt a faint pulse beneath skin that had turned dangerously pale from cold, something deeper than medical training took over. "Hey, sweetie, can you hear me?" Her voice was gentle despite her racing heart. No response. His lips were turning blue. His school uniform, expensive, she noticed, was soaked completely through. How long had he been here? Chika pulled out her phone. No signal. The snowstorm had been getting worse all evening, and this part of the city, the wealthy district she cut through to save time, was oddly deserted. She stripped off her coat without thinking, wrapping it around the child's small frame, trying to preserve whatever body heat remained. Her own scrubs offered pathetic protection against the wind, but that didn't matter. This child was maybe 8 years old, unconscious in snow, and she was a nurse. Saving people was what she did. Then the phone in his coat pocket started ringing. Chika hesitated for only a second before reaching for it. The screen lit up with a single word in Korean characters, and below it, the English translation, Appa. "Dad," she answered, relief flooding through her. "Hello? I found your son, sir. He's unconscious in the snow near the intersection of Maple and Fifth. He needs—" "Who are you?" The voice that cut through her explanation was colder than the winter storm surrounding her. Not panicked, not afraid, just absolute, terrifying control wrapped in a deep Korean accent. "Why do you have my son?" I'm a nurse," Chika stammered, suddenly aware that something about the situation felt wrong. "I found him collapsed on the street. He needs medical attention immediately. His pulse is weak and—" "Where?" One word, not a question, a command. "Maple and Fifth, near the park entrance. I can't get a signal to call an ambulance," and she heard him bark orders in rapid Korean to someone else, his voice sharp as a blade, then back to her, slightly softer but no less intense. "Keep him warm. Do not leave him. Do not let anyone approach. I am 5 minutes away." The line went dead. Chika stared at the phone in her trembling hand, then down at the unconscious child in her arms. 5 minutes. The man, the father, was 5 minutes away. How did he know where to come so quickly? How had he mobilized so fast? And why did his voice sound less like a worried parent and more like a general commanding troops? She tucked the phone back into the boy's pocket and adjusted her coat around him, rubbing his small hands between hers to generate warmth. "It's okay, baby," she murmured, though he couldn't hear her. "Your dad is coming. You're gonna be okay." The snow continued to fall, each flake settling on the child's dark hair like tiny stars. Chika's own hair, natural curls pulled back in a practical bun, was getting soaked, water dripping down her neck beneath her scrubs. She was shivering now, adrenaline wearing off, cold setting in. Then she heard them. Car engines. Multiple. Getting closer fast. 3 black SUVs materialized through the snow like shadows coming to life, screeching to synchronized stops that formed protective barrier around her and the child. Doors opened in perfect unison. Men emerged, at least 8 of them, all wearing expensive dark coats, all moving with military precision. And then he stepped out of the center vehicle. Chika's breath caught. Tall, easily over 6 feet. Sharp features that could have been carved from marble. Dark hair styled with meticulous care, despite the storm. A long black coat that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Perfectly tailored over what looked like an equally expensive suit. But it was his eyes that made her blood run cold, dark, intense, and absolutely lethal as they locked onto the child in her arms. For one heartbeat, his control mask cracked. Raw fear flickered across his features, the primal terror of a parent seeing their child in danger. Then, just as quickly, the control snapped back into place like armor. He crossed the distance between them in 4 long strides, dropping to his knees in the snow without any regard for his expensive clothes. His hands, surprisingly gentle, reached the boy, checking pulse, breathing, temperature, with the practiced efficiency of someone who dealt with medical emergencies before. "Chihoya," he breathed, his voice cracking slightly on the name. Korean words tumbled from his lips, endearments maybe or prayers, as he carefully gathered his son into his arms. The boy stirred slightly, making a small sound, still unconscious, but responding to his father's voice. The man's eyes lifted to meet Chika's. Up close, she could see the faint trace of ink disappearing beneath his collar. Tattoos, partially visible on his neck, despite the formal attire. A thin scar traced his left eyebrow. And those eyes, there was something in them that spoke of violence barely contained, of power that had crushed opposition, of a world so far removed from her own it might as well be another planet. You're the nurse. Not a question. His English was accented but precise, each word deliberate. Yes, Chika started, her voice shakier than she liked. You stayed. He looked down at the boy wrapped in her coat, then back at her. In the storm, in the cold, you gave him your coat. You stayed. Of course I stayed, Chika said, finding her footing despite her chattering teeth. He's a child. He needed help. Anyone would. No. The man cut her off, his tone absolute. They wouldn't. Most people would have called from a distance. Or not at all. His eyes held hers with unsettling intensity. You knelt beside a stranger's child in the snow and gave him your warmth. One of his men approached, speaking rapidly in Korean. The man responded with sharp orders, never taking his eyes off Chika. Within seconds, someone draped a heavy coat, absurdly expensive, over her shoulders. Someone else was on the phone, clearly calling for medical assistance. What's your name? He asked. Chika Okwudili. Chika. He repeated it carefully, as if memorizing each syllable. I am Chun, and you had just saved the most important person in my world. An ambulance was pulling up, lights cutting through the snow. Paramedics rushed toward them with a stretcher, but Chun didn't immediately hand over his son. Instead, he stood, cradling Gio carefully, and looked down at Chika with an expression that was both grateful and deeply troubled. Get in the car, he said quietly. What? I need to. You're coming to the hospital with us. It wasn't a request. You saved my son. That makes you important. And in my world, his jaw tightened slightly. Being important to me can be very dangerous. Before Chika could process that statement, she was being gently but firmly guided toward one of the SUVs. The paramedics were loading Gio, still wrapped in her coat, into the ambulance. Chun was giving orders in multiple languages. And Chika found herself sitting in the back of a luxury vehicle that smelled of leather and expensive cologne, surrounded by men who moved like soldiers and watched her like she was either precious cargo or a potential threat. As the convoy began moving, ambulance leading, SUVs following in tight formation, Chika watched the snow-covered street disappear behind them and realized with growing certainty. She had just called a Korean Mafia boss. And nothing in her life would ever be simple again. What Chika didn't know, what she couldn't have known as she knelt in the snow, was that Chun Yong wasn't just protective. He was possessive. And in his world, people didn't save his son out of simple kindness. They did it for leverage, for power, for survival. The fact that she'd asked for nothing made her either the most naive woman in the city or the most dangerous person he'd ever met. And in 5 minutes, when they arrived at a hospital and his enemies learned that Chun's son had been saved by an outsider, Chika Okwudili would become a target. She just didn't know it yet. If you're hooked, hit that subscribe button now. Drop a fire if you're already obsessed with Chika act of kindness. The next part reveals the enemies learned that Chun's son had been saved by an outsider. You do not want to miss this. The hospital's VIP entrance erupted into controlled chaos the moment Chun's convoy arrived. Staff members who'd been calmly working suddenly froze as 8 armed men in expensive suits emerged from the SUVs, their movements synchronized and predatory. Nurses backed against walls. A young resident's clipboard clattered to the floor. Chun strode to the automatic doors, carrying Gio, his coat billowing behind him like dark wings. His men formed protective phalanx around him, and Chika, who stumbled slightly on legs, still numb from kneeling in the snow. Private suite. Now! Chun commanded in English, then repeated orders in Korean. A flustered administrator appeared, tablet shaking in his hands. Mr. Chun, of course, we have... Now. The word carried such absolute authority that people simply moved. But when 2 of Chun's men tried to follow the medical team into the examination room, weapons visible beneath their jackets, a young doctor stepped forward. Absolutely not. No weapons in... The nearest guard's hand moved toward his gun. Stop. Chika's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Everyone froze. Every eye turned to her. This exhausted black woman in soaked scrubs who'd somehow appear in the center of this dangerous man's world. She stepped forward, positioning herself between the armed men and the terrified medical staff. Her voice was steady despite her hammering heart, carrying the authority she used in emergency rooms when lives hung in the balance. Lower your weapons. All of you. She looked directly at Chun's guards, then at hospital security, who'd arrived with hands on their own sidearms. This is a hospital. That child needs medical care, not a standoff. Let the doctors work. The tension stretched like wire ready to snap. Then Chun did something that made his own men's eyes widen in shock. He raised his hand, a simple gesture, and his guards immediately stepped back, weapons disappearing beneath jackets. Do what she says, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving Chika's face. The words rippled through the room like a stone dropped in still water. Chun Yong, the man whose orders were never questioned, whose authority was absolute, had just deferred to a stranger. His men exchanged glances but obeyed instantly. Hospital security, sensing the shift in power, also backed down. The medical team, still shaken but professional, quickly wheeled Jiho toward the examination room. Chika watched them go, watched her coat disappear around a corner still wrapped around the small boy, and felt the adrenaline finally crash. Her knees buckled. Strong hands caught her before she hit the floor. Chun, moving faster than seemed possible for a man his size. He guided her to a chair in the private waiting area his men had already secured, his touch surprisingly gentle. "When did you last eat?" he asked, crouching in front of her, so they were eye level. "I, 14-hour shift. I don't." Chika's teeth were chattering now, the warmth of the hospital making her realize just how frozen she'd been. Chun snapped his fingers. One of his men immediately produced a phone. Rapid Korean followed, orders being given, resources being mobilized. Within minutes, hot tea appeared in Chika's hands. A blanket, hospital issue but warm, was draped over her shoulders. Someone brought food from somewhere, proper food, not vending machine snacks. And through it all, Chun knelt in front of her in his expensive suit, now soaked and ruined from the snow, watching her with intensity that should have been frightening but somehow wasn't. "You're in shock," he said quietly. "Your body is crashing from adrenaline. Drink the tea. Slowly." Chika obeyed, her nurse's brain recognizing the symptoms he described. Her hands shook as she lifted the cup. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Really?" Chun's jaw tightened. Around them, his men shifted uncomfortably. Clearly this was not a conversation they wanted their boss having in a semi-public hospital corridor. But Chun didn't look away from her, didn't deflect, didn't lie. "I am the man whose son you saved," he said carefully. "And I am the reason people are afraid right now. The reason security wanted to call the police. The reason my men carry weapons." The pieces clicked together in Chika's exhausted mind. The synchronized arrival, the absolute obedience, the way hospital staff recognized it with fear rather than respect, the tattoos, the scars, the controlled violence in every movement. She couldn't quite say it out loud. Many things, Chun finished for her. Most of them would frighten you if you knew the details. But today, I am simply a father who owes you everything. A doctor emerged from the examination room, older, clearly senior staff, trying to maintain professional composure despite the armed men in his corridor. "Mr. Chun, your son is stable. Mild hypothermia, some dehydration, but no permanent damage. Whoever kept him warm." The doctor's eyes found Chika. "You saved his life. Another 10 minutes in that cold, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Chika felt something break loose in her chest, relief so profound it hurt. Chun stood slowly, his hand briefly touching her shoulder, a gesture of gratitude and something else. Connection, maybe? Recognition. "Can I see him?" Chun asked, and for the first time, Chika heard vulnerability in his voice. "Of course. He's asking for you." And the doctor hesitated. "He's asking for the angel lady. I assume he means..." "Me," Chika said quietly, starting to stand. "He means me." Chun turned, offering his hand to help her up. When she took it, his fingers closed around hers with surprising warmth. "Come," he said softly. "My son wants to meet his guardian angel properly." As they walked down the corridor together, this unlikely pair, a nurse and crime boss, surrounded by armed men and frightened hospital staff, Chika finally understood the full weight of what she'd done. She hadn't just saved a child in the snow. She'd saved the son of the most dangerous man in the city. And judging by the way Chun's men watched her with new wariness, by the way hospital staff whispered as she passed, by the way Chun himself looked at her like she was both precious and terrifying, she'd just become part of his world, whether she wanted to be or not. The private hospital room was softly lit, machines beeping steadily as Jiho stirred beneath crisp white sheets. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then suddenly sharp with panic. "Appa!" His small voice cracked with fear. "I'm here, Jihoya." Chun moved to his son's bedside instantly, his large hand gently covering the boy's small one. "You're safe now." But Jiho's eyes were scanning the room frantically. "Where is she? The angel lady? The one who..." His breath hitched. "She saved me, Appa. She was so warm. Where did she go?" Chun's jaw tightened slightly. "She's here. She came with us." "I want to see her." Jiho tried to sit up, wincing. "Please, I need to say thank you." Chun looked toward the doorway where Chika stood, still wrapped in the blanket someone had given her. Watching the reunion with tears in her eyes, she didn't bother hiding. "Come," Chun said quietly. "He wants to meet you properly." Chika entered slowly, her nurse instincts cataloging Jiho's vitals, even as her heart broke at how small and fragile he looked in the hospital bed. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly, kneeling beside the bed so she was at his eye level. "I'm Chika. How are you feeling?" Jiho's face lit up with pure joy. "You're here. You're really here." Then in careful English clearly learned from private tutors, Thank you for saving me. You gave me your coat. You were so brave. You were brave, too, Chika said, gently touching his hand. You held on until help came. Can you stay? Gio's fingers wrapped around hers with surprising strength. Please? Just a little while. Chika glanced at Chun, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Of course, baby. I'll stay as long as you need. Gio smiled, then switched Korean, speaking to his father. Chun responded quietly, his voice gentle in a way Chika hadn't heard before. Then Gio looked back at her. Appa says I should call you Nurse Nuna. Is that okay? Chika's throat tightened. That's perfect. For the next 20 minutes, she sat with Gio while he drifted in and out of sleep, his small hand never letting go of hers. Chun stood at the window, phone pressed his ear, speaking in rapid Korean that sounded both urgent and controlled. His men guarded the door, but the atmosphere had shifted, less threatening now, more protective. When Gio finally fell into deeper sleep, the doctor checking his vitals and confirming he was stable, Chun gestured for Chika to follow him into the hallway. The door closed softly behind them. Suddenly, the weight of everything, the snow, the fear, the strangeness of this entire situation, crashed over Chika like a wave. I should go, she said quietly. My shift starts in 6 hours, and I need to. You gave him your coat. Chun's voice was quieter now, stripped of the command that usually filled it. Left yourself freezing in the snow to save a stranger's child. Why? Chika blinked, surprised by the question. Because he needed help. Because he was a child alone in the cold. That's what people do. Something flickered in Chun's eyes. Disbelief, maybe, or pain that ran deeper than she could understand. Like her answer had revealed something he'd forgotten existed. No, he said softly. That's not what people do. Not in my experience. Before Chika could respond, one of Chun's men approached, speaking urgently in Korean. Chun's expression darkened with each word. He responded sharply, then turned back to Chika with an intensity that made her step back instinctively. We need to talk. Privately. He guided her into a small consultation room, closing the door. His men positioned themselves outside. What's wrong? Chika asked, suddenly afraid. You're not safe anymore. Chun's bluntness was almost brutal. My enemies will have seen you with Jiho. Security cameras. Witnesses. By now, your face is being circulated through networks you don't want to know exist. What? Terror gripped Chika's chest like a vice. I just helped a child. You helped him, why child? Chun's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. You became important to me the moment you saved him. That makes you dangerous to them. A target. A weakness they'll exploit. No. Chika shook her head, backing toward the door. No, I don't want any part of this. I don't want your protection, or your world, or... The door opened. Gio stood there in his hospital gown, and four-pole in one hand, tears streaming down his face. He must have woken, must have heard raised voices. Please don't leave, Nuna. His small voice broke. Please. I'm scared when you're not here. Chika's heart shattered. Chun's expression softened imperceptibly, the monster becoming human for just a moment. He knelt beside his son. Jihoya, Nurse Chika needs to go home. No. Gio's tears came harder. The bad men might come back, but she makes me feel safe. Please, Appa. Please ask her to stay. Chun looked up at Chika, and in his eyes, she saw something unexpected. A plea, not a command. An actual request from a man who probably never asked for anything. 1 week, he said quietly. Let me keep you safe for 1 week while we handle this. I have resources. Protection. I can make sure you're not harmed. I have a job. A life. I can't just... I'll handle your hospital. Your bills. Everything. Chun stood slowly. 1 week, Chika. Then if you want to walk away, I'll make sure you can. But right now, my son needs you. And whether you accept it or not, you need me. Chika looked at Gio's tear-streaked face, at the hope and fear battling in his young eyes. Looked at Chun, this dangerous man who just knelt before her twice in one night. First in the snow, now here. She thought of her small apartment, her routine, her safe, predictable life. Then she thought of a small boy alone in the snow, lips turning blue, and the choice she'd made without hesitation. 1 week, she whispered. Just 1 week. Gio's face lit up. Chun's shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly. Neither of them knew that 1 week would become forever. But Chika, exhausted, terrified, and still wrapped in a hospital blanket, had just sealed her fate in the most dangerous and unexpected way possible. She'd become important to Chun Yong, and in his world, that changed everything. 3 days into her 1 week, Chika tried desperately to reclaim normalcy. She went to work, though her supervisor had mysteriously approved an extended leave she never requested. She grabbed coffee with her best friend Maya, who kept staring at the 2 expensive suited men sitting 3 tables away. She insisted on walking home alone, only to spot the black SUV crawling half a block behind. I hate this, she muttered into her phone. Chun had given her a new one, encrypted, with a single number programmed. I feel like a prisoner. You're protected. His voice was calm, controlled. There's a difference. Is there? Chika snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. This wasn't his fault, except it absolutely was. She hung up, shoving the phone in her pocket as she turned down the shortcut toward her apartment. The alley was darker than usual, one streetlight flickering, the other dead completely. The van appeared from nowhere. Four men in black masks emerged like shadows given form. Chika's nurse training kicked in. Assess, react, survive. She turned to run, but hands grabbed her arms, her hair, dragging her backward toward the vehicle's open door. No. Help. Someone. Her scream cut off as a hand clamped over her mouth. Shut up. The voice was accented, rough. Message for Chun. Then chaos erupted. Chun's guard descended like avenging angels, brutal, efficient, terrifying in their precision. Bodies hit the ground. The hand released her mouth. Chika scrambled away on hands and knees, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. Gunshots. She heard gunshots. Down. Stay down. One of Chun's men, the one she'd seen at the hospital, shoved her behind a dumpster, his body shielding hers. It was over in seconds. For attackers on the ground, disarmed, bleeding. Chun's 3 guards standing over them with weapons drawn, speaking rapidly into earpieces. Then he arrived. Chun's SUV screeched into the alley, and he emerged like a storm-given human form. Fury carved into every line of his face, transforming the controlled businessman into something primal and terrifying. His eyes found Chika first, scanning her for injuries with an intensity that felt almost physical. Then his gaze shifted to his men. Take her to the safe house. Now! His voice was ice over volcano. And bring them. He gestured to the attackers. All of them. Alive. Chun, Chika started, her voice shaking. Not here. He crossed to her in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands, checking her pupils, her neck, her arms for injuries. His touch was surprisingly gentle despite the violence still crackling in the air around him. Are you hurt? No, I don't think. Good. He pulled her into his chest, just for a moment, embrace that felt more like relief than comfort. Then he stepped back, his massive control sliding back into place. Get in the car. We're leaving. My apartment. We'll be packed and moved. No more normal life, Chika. Not until they're dealt with. This is insane. Chika's terror was transforming into anger now. Hot, bright, overwhelming. I just helped a child. I didn't ask for any of this. You helped him, why child? Chun's voice dropped to something dangerous. That means everything. Get in the car. It wasn't a request. The safe house was actually a mansion in the hills overlooking the city, all glass and steel and security that would make a military base jealous. Chun's men swept the property while Chika sat in a massive living room, wrapped in a blanket someone provided, trying to process what had just happened. People had tried to kidnap her, with guns, because she'd saved a child in the snow. The door opened. Chun entered, his coat gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing more of the intricate tattoos that marked his forearms. He looked exhausted and furious, in equal measure. What are you? Chika exploded before he could speak. Who are you really? Why are people trying to kill me? Chun poured himself a drink, something amber and expensive, drank it in one swallow, then looked at her with eyes that held too much darkness. You want the truth? His jaw tightened. I'm the head of the largest Korean crime syndicate in this city. Smuggling, money laundering, protection, everything your nightmares warned you about. The words hung in the air like smoke. I control more money than you can imagine. I have politicians, police, judges in my pocket. I've ordered men killed for far less than threatening my son. He set down the glass with deliberate care. I'm the monster mothers warn their children about. And saving Jiho made you mind protect. Chika felt her world tilting. You're actually a criminal. Yes. Chun's voice was flat, accepting. A very successful one. And my enemies know the fastest way to hurt me is through the people I care about. I'm not one of your people. Chika stood, anger giving her courage. I don't want to be. Too late. Chun's words were gentle but absolute. The moment you wrapped your coat around my son, you became someone important to me. My enemies saw that. They'll use it. Your son wasn't just lost in the snow, was he? Chika's voice shook as pieces clicked together. You said someone took him. Someone tried to kidnap him. Chun's control cracked slightly, fury bleeding through. Someone who knew his school route, his security detail, his schedule. He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. Someone inside my own organization betrayed us. And you, brave, compassionate, impossibly selfless you, walked into the middle of a war you never knew existed. Chika sank back into the chair, the enormity of it crushing her. What have I done? You saved my son. Chun turned, and his expression was softer now. And I will burn this entire city to keep you safe because of it, whether you want me to or not. Outside, in the darkness beyond the mansion's walls, enemies were planning their next move. Inside, a nurse and a crime boss stood on opposite sides of a room, connected by a child's life and a choice neither could take back. The war had begun, and Chika was no longer a bystander. The breakthrough came 5 days later, in Gio's temporary bedroom at the safe house. Chika sat beside him, reading a story in halting Korean, while he corrected her pronunciation with gentle giggles. Then suddenly his laughter stopped. His small body went rigid. Gio, Chika set down the book. Baby, what's wrong? I remember. His voice was barely a whisper, eyes filling with tears. I remember now, Nuna. It wasn't strangers who took me from school. It was Uncle Min. Chika's blood went cold. Uncle Min, Appa's friend. He said Appa wanted him to pick me up. But then he drove the wrong way, and I got scared, and Jiho's tears spilled over. I jumped out a red light and ran. And he chased me. Into the snow. Chun appeared in the doorway, having heard everything. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes, God, his eyes burned with fury that should have ignited the air itself. Min Suk. The name fell from his lips like a death sentence. My oldest friend, my most trusted lieutenant. Within hours, Chun moved with cold, surgical precision. Chika watched in the mansion security room. She shouldn't have been there, but no one dared tell her to leave, as Chun orchestrated the dismantling of a traitor's entire network. Phone calls made in 3 languages. Resources mobilized. People appearing and disappearing with terrifying efficiency. Min Suk was found in a hotel downtown, surrounded by evidence of betrayal. Communications with rival syndicates, wire transfers, plans to use Jiho as leverage to take over Chun's organization. Chika didn't see what happened next. Chun made sure of that, but she saw him return 3 hours later, his white shirt gone, replaced with black. His hands scrubbed clean, but his eyes still carrying the weight of violence. This was the man everyone feared. The ruthless crime boss who eliminated threats without hesitation. The monster who'd built an empire on calculated brutality. It should have terrified her. Instead, watching him go straight to Jiho's room, checking on his sleeping son with hands that had just delivered justice, kissing his forehead with devastating gentleness. Chika saw something else entirely. A father protecting his child, at any cost. That night, Chun found Chika in Jiho's room, sitting in the chair she claimed as hers, watching the boy sleep peacefully for the first time since the kidnapping attempt. It's done, Chun said quietly from the doorway. Min Suk, his network, everyone involved. The threat is neutralized. Chika nodded, not asking for details she didn't need. You can leave now. Chun's voice was carefully neutral. I'll make sure you're protected. New identity if you want it, money, security. But you're free. You fulfilled your week and then some. And Jiho? Chika asked softly, not looking away from the sleeping child. We'll miss you. Pain flickered across Chun's face. Probably for a long time. But you deserve your life back. The normal one. The safe one. Chika finally turned to look at him. This dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow become central to her world in less than 2 weeks. What if I don't want to leave? Chun's careful composure cracked. Chika, you know what I am. What I've done. What I'll do again if I have to. I know you're a father who'd burn the world for his son. She stood, crossing to him slowly. I know Jiho needs someone who sees him as more than an heir to a criminal empire. Someone who teaches him kindness alongside strength. She met his eyes, saw the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. And I think you need that too. I'm not good. Chun's voice was raw. I'm not the kind of man you should. You knelt in the snow for your son. Chika touched his face gently, feeling him tense then slowly relax. You let me give orders to your men. You spent a week protecting someone who can offer you nothing in return. She smiled softly. Maybe you're not as much of a monster as you think. Chika, 1 week became 1 choice, she whispered. And I'm choosing to stay. For Jiho. And she took a breath. For you. Chun's arms came around her carefully, as if she might break or disappear. You're sure? This world, my world, it's dangerous. Violent. Nothing like what you deserve. I'm sure. And surprisingly, she was, teach me to navigate it. Protect us. Let us protect you too. For the first time since she'd met him, Chun Yong smiled. Not the controlled expressions he used as armor, but something real and devastating. Okay, he breathed. Okay. 6 months later. Look. Jiho ran through the mansion's garden, holding up a flower he'd picked. Chika, who'd spent months learning Korean properly, understanding Chun's world while maintaining her own identity, caught him in her arms, spinning him around. It's beautiful, baby. For you. Jiho pressed it into her hand. Because you're beautiful too. From the terrace, Chun watched him with an expression that still surprised him. Contentment. Peace. Things he'd thought his life would never hold. Chika looked up, caught his gaze, and smiled. The nurse who'd knelt in the snow to save a stranger's child. Who'd walked into his dangerous world and somehow made it better. Who'd taught his son compassion and taught him, God, taught him what it meant to be human again. That evening, as Jiho slept between them during movie night, a weekly tradition now, Chun took Chika's hand. I never thanked you properly, he said quietly in Korean, knowing she'd understand now. For saving my son. For saving me. You save us every day, too, she replied, her Korean accent but confident. That's what family does. Family. The words settled over them like a blessing. The nurse who saved a child in the snow had found her family in the most unlikely place. In the arms of a man everyone feared and a boy everyone wanted to use. She walked into a war and somehow found home. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is show kindness to a stranger's child. But sometimes that kindness changes everything. For everyone. They tried to break her with fear and violence. But Chika turned compassion into courage, danger into family, and a monster into a man who finally remembered how to be human. The snow fell that night, but what grew from it was something warm, unexpected, and worth fighting the entire world to protect. Subscribe for stories where compassion changes everything. Drop a red heart if you believe the best families are the ones we choose, not the ones we're born into. Comment below, what would you have done if you found that child in the snow? Would you have stayed? But all of them changed the world. One choice, one moment, one life at a time.